This is the build video and I'm going to get on with it, but in the last video I did an overview of this tool and I didn't explain as well as I could have done how it works, so I'll do a quick demo first, explain that, and then we'll get on with it. I've cut through those mortises on the table saw so we can see what's going on, and I'll use a drill bit to help explain. The confusion seems to be that because the router is swinging from side to side, that it would end up making a wedge shape or a dovetail shaped mortise, but that's not the case, and the reason is because even though it's swinging from left to right, it's actually getting plunged in straight, so it doesn't actually matter what angle that router bit is at. If it's been plunged in straight, then it's going to make a straight edge. So the way I do it is I swing it from left to right and plunge it in slowly, and then at the end I make one full plunge down that edge and one full plunge down the other edge, and that will clean up those edges and we get a nice mortise. And here's a floating tenon or a domino, whatever you want to call it, from a past project, and that fits in there not too bad at all. Hopefully that clears up any confusion and we'll get on to the build. I've just cut this length of hardwood into square stock, then I cut it down to 4 equal sizes. I've drilled 2 holes in each piece and I've done my very best to keep that as accurate as I can. 2 of the pieces will be fixed on the outside, and then the 2 in the centre will slide up and down, and with some blocks glued in place that will form a carriage. The bars I've used are galvanised steel, and there's a little bit of a loose fit, but it's okay. That little bit of wobble I'm going to fix, because as we build this carriage up with the blocks, it will take out any of that slack. These are all 12mm drill bits, but after testing them they all differ ever so slightly. But using one of those and this chrome pipe, I could get a perfect fit and there's no play in there. But the problem there is the holes need to be drilled absolutely perfectly to keep this parallel and in line, and that is very difficult to do. So it's much easier to have that little bit of slack and work with it and tighten that up. I've just cut my 3 blocks out of 3/4 inch ply or 19mm ply, and this centre one you need to sneak up on the cut so it's a really nice fit between the 2 bars, and that's what will keep the whole thing from twisting. There's no sideways movement at all there now, but there is a little bit of up and down movement, but we can fix that. I've got a piece of hardwood again here. I've just cut that down and that fits in there snugly. Now I need to take a slice of that. I've just sanded the 2 blocks carefully so they sit just a hair above the surface. You can just feel that. And then the next job is to take this piece of 4mm ply. I've just cut it off camera, and this is going to be glued to the top, and it'll hold it all together and it'll press these blocks down, so that will eliminate any up and down movements. It took a few minutes, but that's working really nice. I've clamped it down to try it out and it works fantastic. It's very easy to do. It's just basically a few blocks that are built up around the bars just to get a nice fit without any slack. In the original ones with the draw slides, those draw slides do actually have a little bit of play in them, so this is an improvement. This is how it sits in the body, but next I need to sand a little bit off the end of these blocks here on the carriage to give it some clearance at the side and also underneath as well. I could have cut those smaller size when I made them, but it was easier to keep them the same size as the outside ones to keep the holes all accurate and in the same place. That's the carriage done, so I'll move on to the next part, which sits on top and it pivots left and right, and that holds the trim router in place. These two pieces get sandwiched together and then they get fixed onto this piece here. And this hole is to connect the hose of the shop vac. I've just cut this ring and that gets screwed to the front. It's there to attach a piece of 4-inch hose and to trap the dust when the mortiser is in use. It has an opening that's larger than the body of the trim router, so the dust can go back through and into the hose. All we have to do now is open up this middle section here. This is looking from the back. The hose goes into this piece here, and you can see where I've marked out. I need to cut that out with the bandsaw, and that will create an opening so the dust can get all the way through and into the hose. I've just had a thought and I've decided I'm going to put a piece of laminate on top of here, and that's so when I put this next part on, it swivels on there and it'll slide nice on this surface here. On the prototype I didn't have this and it still worked fine. I put a little bit of candle wax on there and it slid pretty well, but I think this will be better. What I could have done is used a piece of whiteboard for this top here, and then it would already have that nice shiny surface and that would work well too. I've just cut this piece of aluminium angle, and the reason for it is to stop any chance of this part here from tipping forward. So that will hold it down, but it still allows it to swivel from side to side. That's a bit tight, but we can see the high spots, so I'll just keep sanding those and testing it until we get a good fit. I'm going to open this part of the ring up slightly to match this opening here, and then I'll screw it on. I'm just going to put a second screw and that will go here, and that allows enough movement for this joint to tighten up at the top, and this has only got to hold the hose, so it doesn't need to be that strong. For the dust collection to work, you will need a small piece of 4-inch or 100mm hose, and it needs to be of the kind that compresses. The hose needs to be long enough that it makes a seal with the front, but it also needs to compress enough to make a full cut. To help that, I'm going to take the wire out, and if you're very careful you can peel this wire out, and it's not too difficult at all. What I am going to do is keep one ring of the wire, and that will help the hose keep its shape. So if I just carefully snip that. That compresses better, and there's better movement when we're swiveling the router too. The ring works well, it keeps it in shape. Another option, and I haven't tried it because I haven't got any, is a hose from a clothes dryer. I think that would work out well. It should compress down because that's very lightweight, and I think it'd be sturdy enough to do the job, and that may be an option for you. I've used thread locker on the threaded insert, and that's so the bolt can't undo. I've tightened it all the way up, and now I need to just back it off ever so slightly, just so we've got that movement back. I decided to make the fence very simple and keep it square. It keeps it compact, it's easy to make, and it's easy to use. I did make an adjustable fence. I'm not going to show how to make it in this video, but it will be included in the plans. I've just cut this hole in the front of the body. It's there for the collet nut of the router to run in left to right, obviously with some clearance. It lets the nut come almost to the front face of the body, otherwise it would have been back behind the plywood and we would have lost 12mm of the cutter. This way we can make the mortise as deep as we possibly can by using the full length of the cutter. I've just put it together to try it out, and I've cut that hole in the wrong place. It needed to go a touch higher. I've just glued a piece in there, and now I'm going to have a second crack at it. This time I'm going to put it together, and I'm going to take a mark directly off the router bit itself. That turned out a bit of a mess, so I'm going to put a piece of laminate on the front to tidy it up. The handle gets glued on the top, and there's no real good way of fixing this. You could nail down, I suppose, but I'm just going to rely on the glue, so I'm going to do that with epoxy. Because it's 5-minute epoxy, I can stand here and hold it until it sets. And before we finally assemble it, we put a compression spring over the front of one of the rods. I did put one on both rods, but that was a little bit too hard to compress. With contact adhesive, I put a piece of an old sanding belt on the underneath of the fence, and that gives it a little bit of grip to the workpiece when you're using it. Now we need to set it up. We need a mark on the inside of the fence here, and we'll use that to line up to our workpiece where we want to make a mortise. The mark needs to be aligned to the center of the router, and you would think that the router would already be centered, but it'd be more than likely off a little bit. So we need to go through a small process to align the center of the router to the mark on the front of the fence. Plunge the router bit forward and check with a square until you've got it centered, and then with a pencil just make a mark either side at the back. With the square, I've just marked a line across the top and transferred it down as well. Start with a mark exactly in the center, line it up to the line on the top of your scrap piece of wood, and making sure that the router is centered with these lines that we put either side there. We'll plunge it in. They're not held, but if we plunge it in straight, we should be able to see if we're going off those lines, and you shouldn't do. If the hole you make isn't centered, then make adjustments with a new mark on the fence, either left a bit or right a bit, and then start the test again. Once you've got that centered, you know your router bit is aligned with that mark on the fence, and you're all good to go. Once I was sure where the center was, I came across so far, and with trial and error I found out where I needed to stop to make a 20mm mortise. And obviously I had to do the same the other side, and then from that point on I just kept coming over so far, just checking it, and once I was happy with it, made a line, and just kept doing that. And I've gone to 45, there's plenty of room. It would probably go to 60, 65, but I don't think I'll even go as wide as 45. 40 would probably be the most I would use it for, but you could keep going. I had to make a second hole because I hit the limit of travel on the stop. I'm going to redo those markings with a permanent marker. Hopefully you liked it. If you want to build your own, I've got plans available on my website. I'll put a link in the description, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Saying bye, pips. Saying bye. Yeah.